Huge burnout. So the age-old question, okay, that's why we're here. How much power in a used European car can you get for the least amount of money? That's exactly what the E55 AMG, the 03 here that I'm driving, does in the used market. That's at least the question it should answer. Under the hood, 5.4 liter AMG V8, that's no stranger. I have driven a previous generation E55 AMG, same engine, same basic engine, just naturally aspirated. And then again, I drove Brooks' car, NA 5.4, but his was manual swapped and it was a C55, not an E55. And of course, they shoved a twin screw supercharger on it, which makes a lot of noise. Not in this application, but the reason I know that is because I drove a Toyota Soarer, a twin-charged Toyota Soarer, which you guys probably remember. Insane, crazy stuff. So, same supercharger here. My God, that's quick. That's so incredibly fast. Interesting though, contrary to, let's say, a C63 AMG, I'm getting a lot more noise from the engine itself, actually, than the exhaust, which I like. There's no real supercharger whine here. You don't really hear the supercharger, but this E55 I'm driving today is completely stock, which is fine because it makes 469 horsepower, 512 pound-feet of torque. But what you need to know is M113K, forged rods in this engine, very robust engine. The rest of the car, though, I'm not so sure about, and that's perhaps why these are so cheap in the used market now. And when I say cheap, I mean the average on Bring a Trailer is under $20,000 USD. Some haven't even sold for $15,000. So 516 pound-feet of torque for, I mean, I'm not going to say what the owner of this car paid for this one, but it was a lot less than $15,000 USD, like a lot less. Whether or not you can upkeep it, or if you have experience working on Euro cars, I guess that's kind of the big question here. I mean, the amount of power and torque that this was making at the time, ridiculous. I mean, to compare this to the 911 Turbo at the time with the X50 package, little bump in power there, those made 450 horsepower. The low end torque here is really what you're buying this car for. This is such a muscle car. Now, what it has in raw performance, it does kind of, oh, there's a little supercharger whine at the top end, right at the end of the top. It kind of lacks in driver feel and feedback. It's got drive-by-wire. It's even got brake-by-wire, which somehow that's like a mental exercise for me to get my mind around. Brake-by-wire. I know a lot of modern cars have that. That doesn't make me sleep well at night. So thanks to our friend AMG Meister, I learned the later E55s of this generation ditched the brake-by-wire system and went back to a traditional setup. So yeah, trip over yourself and course correct. Great strategy, Mercedes. But hey, they were still destroying the competition at the time, and we'll dive more into that soon. But right now, what else can you scoop up with big power for cheap? Traditionally, my mind would go straight to an LS or something else American, like a C5 Corvette C06, but it's too late. Yeah, the secret's out with that one. They're going for way more than $25,000. That doesn't surprise me. A 5th gen Camaro SS has huge potential, but they're just as much as the Z06. Not to mention a 2023 Camaro SS can't even compete with the E55 in power and torque. So this is where my head went. High mileage, beat up E60 M5, more power but less torque from the V10, so pick your poison. That's not the only other Euro car, though, that's breathing down the E55's neck, both then and now. also, another reason why I wanted to drive this is because the owner of this car also owned that Audi RS6 I drove, the C5 RS6 Avant. Wow, super torquey. He had an RS6. These cars are very similar. They were, of course, competitors at the time. Big differences being a twin-turbo 4.2-liter V8 in that RS6 versus a supercharged 5.4-liter V8. So what I'm feeling here, a lot more low-end torque than that RS6 has. The 4.2 obviously was built and engineered by Cosworth, though, and we can see that just in kind of the mentalities of the engineering of these cars. The 5.4 is a 3-valve engine. That's so archaic to me, and it kind of speaks to that kind of muscle car ethos that a lot of AMG V8s have, versus the Cosworth. That's a 5-valve engine, which was quite a big deal at the time. I mean, we look back just a few years earlier at the Ferrari F355. That's what 5 in F355 stood for, was 5 valves per cylinder. That was like a big deal. Everything else, the air suspension here, quite a bit different than what was in the RS6. That car individually would adjust the dampers to keep the car as planted as possible in a corner based on load and all that stuff. Instead of with a focus towards performance, this is a focus towards luxury, which makes sense, of course. So the airbag's probably prone to fail. It does have, of course, self-leveling, and it has different suspension modes that we can go into here, as well as the 5-speed has comfort, sport settings for how quickly it will shift. Now, right out of the gate, quite a bit more responsive in the transmission department than the RS6. Sports 1, Sports 2. Comfort, Sports 1, and Sports 2. I guess 2 is better than 1. 2 is more than 1. I don't know if more is necessarily better, but we'll try it out. So, okay, so I was in Sport with the transmission. There, it was holding gears and it was doing things relative to the throttle inputs that I would expect of it. Okay. With the paddles, not so great. Yeah, marginally more responsive than the RS6 in manual mode. Downshifts does not blip the downshifts. Again, it's an awkward time because this was before the M156, the 6.2, and it was before the 7-speed transmission, so that's why you get the values of these cars that you get. Wow, I mean, the downshift. It's as if I was driving a manual, and instead of blipping at all, I just went and let out the clutch, and it kind of lurches forward like that. It's, frankly, just leave it in automatic. Ride's nice, though. I think the RS6 is a cooler car. I think it's more cool. It has that cool factor, being rare and everything. Obviously, the Avant was never sold here. Does it look good? It's a sleeper. It's subdued. I don't think these look very good. You know, Mercedes fanatics tend to have strange taste from where I'm coming from. So I don't get it. I think the RS6 looks infinitely better, both the C5 and C6 generations. Huge 8-piston brakes up front. Yeah, zero brake feel. Zero. It feels mushy as mushy gets, to be honest with you. Oh, soaks up bumps pretty well. It feels a little bit lighter than the RS6. This has a shorter wheelbase too. It's a little bit of a smaller car. Is it a driver's car? Look, it's making me laugh. Does laughter make it a driver's car? No, it makes it a fun, ridiculous kind of muscle car that would be great to go on a road trip with, assuming it holds up mechanically, and great to live with. It's comfortable, it's quiet from wind noise, it soaks up bumps. Yeah, the interior, I'll take the E55's interior over the RS6 any day of the week. These seats are awesome. I would expect nothing less from AMG, even an AMG of 20 years ago. I mean, the lack of feeling in the steering and braking does not help this car's cause. It helps its scary factor. Like, there's a lot of brake, don't get me wrong, there is steering, we have tire, but the disconnect kind of begins to take away from my confidence as a driver. Just needs an exhaust, well, I shouldn't say it needs an intake. All I want is more supercharger whine, but wow. Okay, it'll hook up. Okay, we're gonna turn ESC back on. See if it lets us have a little bit of fun. Oh my God. All right. Yeah, it cuts power pretty aggressively. That's the E55. What would you buy? What would you buy for $10,000 to $20,000 USD that just has a butt ton of power? Please let me know in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you soon.